I thought I knew how to clean up toxic spills, but nothing prepared me for discovering my wife's secret at her boss's lake house. When she announced her pregnancy after months of rejecting me, something didn't add up. Then at the gender reveal party, her boss approached us with a smile. "Congratulations, you're going to be a father." My wife beamed. What I did next left everyone speechless. My name is Daniel Elliott. I'm 42 years old, and until last year, I thought I had everything figured out. A successful career as an environmental disaster recovery specialist, a beautiful home in Portland, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage to Amber. We'd been married for 7 years, and I genuinely thought we were one of those couples who had beaten the odds. I've spent my life cleaning up other people's messes, oil spills, chemical leaks, natural disasters. I'm the guy companies call when they need to fix their catastrophes. I've developed a reputation for being level-headed, for finding solutions where others see only problems. I take pride in that. It's who I am, a fixer, a problem solver. In the field, there's no room for emotional reactions. You assess, you plan, you execute. I applied the same approach to my marriage. When I met Amber at a charity fundraiser for hurricane victims, it felt like finding a port in a storm. She was intelligent, passionate about her work in sustainable development, and we connected instantly. Within a year, we were married. Her ambition matched mine, and I admired how she could light up a room with her energy. She took a job at Green Future Solutions, a company that aligned with her values. The irony that she would eventually work under Jonathan Grant, both professionally and, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The first 3 years were everything I had hoped for. We traveled when my disaster relief work allowed, renovated our craftsman-style home together, and talked about starting a family. But trying to have a baby changed everything. Month after month of disappointment took its toll. The medical appointments, the tracking apps, the scheduled intimacy that felt more clinical than loving. It all began to erode what we had built. It'll happen when it's meant to happen, I would say, trying to ease her frustration. That's easy for you to say. Amber would snap back. You're not the one with the biological clock ticking. Then came the miscarriages. 3 of them, each more devastating than the last. I held her while she cried, attended grief counseling sessions, and tried to be the husband she needed. But something changed in Amber. She became distant, guarded. She stopped talking about babies altogether. Maybe we should take a break from trying, she suggested one night, not meeting my eyes. I agreed, thinking it would help her heal. What I didn't realize was that she had already found another kind of comfort, the kind that would ultimately destroy everything we had built together. But like I said, there were signs. I just wasn't ready to read them. My work takes me away from home for weeks at a time. That's the nature of environmental disaster response. You go where you're needed, when you're needed. After our 3rd miscarriage, I started noticing Amber didn't mind my absences as much. In fact, she seemed almost relieved when I'd get called away. "Don't worry about rushing back," she told me during one phone call while I was managing a chemical spill in Michigan. "I've got plenty to keep me busy at work." The change was subtle but unmistakable. When I returned home from that 3-week deployment, something felt different in our house. Pictures had been moved, furniture slightly rearranged. The sheets on our bed smelled like they'd just been washed. At the time, I chalked it up to Amber coping with grief by reorganizing, something she'd done before. That evening, she barely looked up from her laptop when I walked through the door. "How was the trip?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Challenging. We managed to contain the spill before it reached the water table," I replied, setting my bags down. "Did you miss me at all?" She finally glanced up. "Of course I did. I've just been swamped with this new sustainability project. Jonathan has me leading the team." Jonathan Grant, her boss. The name didn't trigger any alarms for me then. He was just the executive who'd hired her 2 years ago, a silver-haired corporate type with an environmental science background and a reputation for mentoring promising employees. "That's great," I said, genuinely proud of her. "Maybe we should celebrate this weekend." Amber's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Actually, Jonathan invited the whole team to his lake house this Saturday. Team building. I thought I mentioned it." She hadn't. "I just got home," I pointed out. "Can't you skip it?" Amber sighed, closing her laptop. "Daniel, this is important for my career. You're gone for weeks at a time for your work. Can't I have this one weekend?" I didn't press the issue. After all, she deserved career success too, and I didn't want to be the kind of husband who held his wife back. So that Saturday, she packed an overnight bag. In case the wine flows too freely, she explained, and left for Jonathan's lake house. While she was gone, I busied myself with home repairs I've been putting off. The deck needed resealing. The garage needed organizing. Physical labor has always cleared my head. By Sunday afternoon, I had worked up a solid sweat and a healthy appetite. I decided to surprise Amber by picking her up at the lake house. Maybe we could grab dinner on the way home, reconnect a bit. I didn't call ahead. That was my first mistake. The drive to the lake took about an hour. It was a beautiful property, secluded, with a modern A-frame surrounded by pines. Expensive. Very expensive. The kind of place you own when you're an executive, not when you're working in middle management like Amber. There were only 2 cars in the driveway, a silver Mercedes I recognized as Jonathan's, and Amber's blue Subaru. No other team members. No team building. My stomach clenched as I parked next to her car. I sat there, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to come up with an innocent explanation. Maybe the others had carpooled and already left. Maybe it was just a smaller leadership meeting. I reached for my phone to call her, but then stopped. Instead, I stepped out of my truck and walked toward the house. Standing in front of that lake house, I felt a strange calm wash over me. Years of handling crisis situations had trained me to think clearly under pressure. I walked up to the door and knocked firmly. 3 solid raps that echoed through the trees. Footsteps approached. The door swung open, and there stood Jonathan Grant, wearing nothing but sweatpants, a drink in his hand. His eyes widened in surprise. "Daniel," he said, recovering quickly. "This is unexpected. Where's my wife?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Before he could answer, Amber appeared behind him, wrapped in what looked like one of his shirts. Her face drained of color. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" I looked between them, taking in the scene with the detached precision I usually reserve for assessing contamination zones. "I thought I'd surprise you. Looks like I'm the one who got surprised instead." Jonathan cleared his throat. "Amber, maybe you two should talk privately." "Don't bother," I said, holding up a hand. "I've seen enough." Amber rushed forward. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like." "Really?" I cut her off. "Because it looks exactly like you're sleeping with your boss while I'm at home thinking we're working through our grief together." She flinched at my words. I turned to Jonathan. "Let me make something crystal clear. I'm not the kind of man who makes scenes or starts fights, but I'm the kind who values honesty and respect." Jonathan had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, Elliot, these things happen." "No," I interrupted, my voice controlled but steely. "Affairs happen when people choose to let them happen. You both made that choice." I turned back to Amber. "Pack your things. I'll wait in the car." As I walked back to my truck, my legs felt surprisingly steady. I sat behind the wheel, watching the lake's surface ripple in the wind, and took several deep breaths. When Amber emerged 10 minutes later, her face was streaked with tears, but I felt nothing. The numbness was a blessing. The drive home was silent for the first 20 minutes. Finally, Amber spoke. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," I replied evenly. "Actions speak louder than words, and yours have said everything I need to hear. Are you going to throw me out?" Her voice was small. "I considered this." "No, that's not who I am. You can stay in the guest room until you figure out your next steps. I'll be sleeping at Mark's place for a few days." Mark was my oldest friend, the one person who had stood by me through every crisis. "Just like that? You're not even going to fight for us?" she asked incredulously. I glanced at her. "Fighting implies there's something worth saving." "Is there, Amber?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you've already made your choice." The rest of the drive passed in silence. I dropped her at our house, waited until she was inside, then drove to Mark's. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and wordlessly handed me a beer. "She's cheating," I said simply. Mark nodded. "Her loss, brother. Her loss." I spent that night on Mark's couch, staring at the ceiling, mentally rebuilding the boundaries of my life, this time without Amber at the center. 2 weeks passed. I threw myself into work, accepting an assignment in Texas that kept me away from Portland and the remnants of my shattered marriage. I needed the distance, the focus of a challenging cleanup operation. In the field, I was still the unflappable Daniel Elliott, the man who could organize chaos into order, who could stand knee-deep in disaster and see a path forward. Mark called me regularly, updating me on the local gossip. Apparently, Amber had moved out 3 days after I left, presumably to Jonathan's place. Good. It made things cleaner. You doing okay? Mark asked during one of our calls. You sound too calm. I'm processing, I said honestly. No point in falling apart. I've got a job to do here. Just don't bury it, man. That's all I'm saying. He was right, of course. But compartmentalizing was a skill I'd mastered long ago. When I returned to Portland, I focused on practical matters. I met with a lawyer, started divorce proceedings, and changed the locks on the house. I wasn't being vindictive, just protecting what was mine. The home had been my inheritance from my grandfather, purchased before I'd even met Amber. She had no claim to it. Then, just as I was establishing a new normal, everything shifted again. I was grabbing coffee at my usual spot when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Daniel, this is Lisa, Jonathan's admin assistant. We need to talk. It's important. I nearly ignored it. What could possibly be left to discuss? But something made me respond, setting up a meeting at a quiet diner on the edge of town. Lisa was a petite woman with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She got straight to the point. I've worked for Jonathan for 5 years, she said, stirring her coffee. Your wife isn't the first. There have been at least 3 others that I know of, all following the same pattern. I leaned back. Why are you telling me this? Because this time it's different. Jonathan's wife is getting suspicious, and he's panicking. But there's more. She hesitated, then met my eyes directly. Your wife is pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. After all our struggles, all our lost pregnancies. How do you know? I schedule his appointments. They went to an OB/GYN together last week, and I heard them discussing it in his office. She's about 8 weeks along. 8 weeks. I calculated quickly. That aligned perfectly with when we'd reconnected intimately, right before I discovered the affair. Lisa seemed to read my thoughts. Jonathan's worried it might be yours. I heard them arguing about it. I took a slow breath, processing this new information. Again, why tell me this? She pushed a manila envelope across the table. Because what they're doing is wrong, and I'm tired of enabling it. These are copies of text messages between them. You deserve to know. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate your honesty. As I drove home, a new resolve hardened within me. If Amber was pregnant, and if there was any chance the child was mine, the stakes had just changed dramatically. I spent the next few days analyzing Lisa's evidence like I would any contamination report, methodically, dispassionately. The texts between Amber and Jonathan were damning. They'd been involved for nearly a year, since shortly after her last miscarriage. There were intimate messages, plans for rendezvous during my work trips, and discussions about their future together. But most revealing were the recent exchanges about her pregnancy. What if it's his? Jonathan had texted. It's not, Amber replied. Trust me. We need to be sure. Get tested. I will. But I know when it happened. The timestamps matched exactly with when Amber had suddenly become affectionate again after months of distance. The timing was deliberate, a calculated attempt to pass off Jonathan's child as mine. I called Mark. I need a favor, I said when he picked up. A big one. He didn't hesitate. Name it. I need you to install security cameras at the house. Nothing obvious. And I need you to let me know if Amber stops by. Mark, who ran a home security company, understood immediately. Consider done. But what are you planning, Daniel? Nothing illegal, I assured him. Just protecting myself. 2 days later, Mark called. She came by with Jonathan. They spent about an hour inside, took some of her things, and left. I got all on video. Perfect. I headed back to Portland the next morning. Walking into my house felt strange, like entering a museum of my former life. I moved through each room, noting what Amber had taken, mostly clothes and personal items. My lawyer had advised me to document everything, so I photographed each space, marking what was missing. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I found her wedding ring on the dresser. A statement, I supposed. Fine by me. As I sorted through what remained, my phone rang. Amber's number. I answered coolly. Hello, Daniel, she said, sounding tearful. Can we talk? Please. Part of me wanted to hang up, but that wasn't who I was. I'm listening. This isn't how I wanted things to end between us. I made a terrible mistake. An affair lasting nearly a year isn't a mistake, I interrupted. It's a choice you made every day. She was quiet for a moment. You're right. I'm sorry, but there's something important we need to discuss face to face. The pregnancy, I stated flatly. Her sharp intake of breath told me she hadn't expected me to know. How did you? It doesn't matter. What matters is whether it's mine. Daniel, I think it might be. The timing. The timing you deliberately orchestrated. My voice remained calm despite my anger. You suddenly wanted me after months of nothing, and now I'm supposed to believe this is coincidence. It wasn't like that, she protested. Let's talk tomorrow, I said firmly. My house, 7 p.m. Bring the prenatal records and any test results you have. I hung up before she could respond, then called my lawyer to update him on the situation. If there was any chance this child was mine, I needed to be prepared for what came next. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in weeks, surrounded by the remnants of a marriage built on what I now knew were lies. Amber arrived exactly at 7, looking both nervous and hopeful. She'd made an effort with her appearance, hairstyled, light makeup, wearing a dress I'd once complimented. The slight curve of her abdomen confirmed what Lisa had told me. I led her to the kitchen table, where I'd set out 2 glasses of water. Nothing more welcoming than that. Thank you for seeing me, she began. I nodded once. You said we needed to talk. So talk. She placed a folder on the table. These are the medical records. I'm 10 weeks pregnant. I opened the folder and scanned the documents. Everything matched the timeline I'd worked out. I know what you're thinking, Amber said softly. But the baby could be yours, Daniel. We were together right around the time of conception. After months of separate bedrooms, I pointed out. Convenient timing. She looked down. I made a terrible mistake with Jonathan. I was lost after the miscarriages, feeling like a failure as a woman, as your wife. He was there. He listened. Stop. I held up a hand. I don't need to hear how it happened. What I need is the truth about this pregnancy. I'm telling you the truth. It could be yours. I studied her face, searching for sincerity in features I once thought I knew by heart. Then you won't object to a paternity test. Those aren't safe until after birth, she protested. Non-invasive prenatal paternity tests can be done now, I countered. I've done my research. If you're serious about this child possibly being mine, you'll agree to the test. She hesitated, which told me everything. I've already scheduled an appointment, I continued. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll text you the address. And if it's yours? She asked. What then? I met her gaze directly. Then I'll be the best father I can be. But understand this, if it's my child, I'll seek full custody. Your relationship with Jonathan has destroyed any trust between us, but it won't affect how I parent. Her eyes widened. You can't take my baby. I don't want to, I said honestly, but I will do whatever is necessary to protect my child, if it is mine. Amber stood, visibly shaken. You've changed, Daniel. I remained seated, maintaining my composure. No, I've just stopped ignoring what's right in front of me. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Be there if you want any chance of working through this civilly. After she left, I poured myself a bourbon and stepped onto the back deck. The night air was cool against my face as I contemplated the possibility of fatherhood under these broken circumstances. Whatever happened next, I would face it head on, with clarity, purpose, and the strength I'd always found in life's toughest moments. The 2 weeks waiting for the paternity test results felt like an eternity. I buried myself in work, taking on a complex coastal remediation project that required my complete focus. Physical labor and scientific precision had always been my refuge, a world where problems had solutions, where contamination could be contained and harmful elements neutralized. If only personal crises could be managed so effectively. When the call finally came, I stepped away from the team I was supervising and answered with steady hands. Mr. Elliott? This is Dr. Sharma from Pacific Genetics. Your results are ready. I closed my eyes briefly. Go ahead. Based on the DNA analysis, you are not the biological father of the fetus. The probability of paternity is 0%. Despite suspecting this outcome, hearing it confirmed sent an unexpected wave of grief through me. Not just for the child that wasn't mine, but for the family I'd thought we were building. Thank you, doctor, I said, my voice even. Will you be informing Mrs. Elliott as well? Yes, she's listed as the second contact. We'll call her shortly. I ended the call and stood at the edge of the remediation site, watching waves crash against the rocky shore. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career restoring damaged ecosystems, yet couldn't salvage my own marriage. My phone buzzed again. Amber. I let go to voicemail. Whatever she had to say could wait until I processed this information on my own terms. That evening, I called my lawyer and updated him on the results. He assured me this simplified the divorce proceedings significantly. She has no claim on your inheritance property, and with the infidelity documented, we're in a strong position, he explained. I suggest we move forward quickly. I agreed. The sooner this chapter closed, the better. 3 days later, Amber appeared at my door unannounced. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. You're not answering my calls, she accused. I stepped aside to let her in, maintaining a respectful distance. I needed time. The test results confirmed what we already knew. I finished for her. The child is Jonathan's. She sank onto the couch, hands protectively covering her slightly rounded abdomen. He doesn't want it. Says it complicates things with his wife. I felt no satisfaction at her predicament. Despite everything, I wasn't built to take pleasure in another's pain, even someone who had hurt me deeply. What do you want from me, Amber? She looked up, eyes pleading. I made a horrible mistake. Jonathan isn't who I thought he was. He promised me so much, and now... Her voice trailed off. Now you've lost both of us, I said quietly. She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. I never stopped loving you, Daniel. We could try again. For us. For this baby that needs a father. I studied her face, searching for the woman I'd once adored. But all I saw was someone desperate, looking for a safety net after her plans collapsed. No, I said firmly but without malice. I deserve better than being someone's second choice. And that child deserves better than a father who resents its existence. Amber's expression hardened. You're punishing me. I'm choosing myself. I corrected her. Something I should have done months ago. As I showed her to the door, I felt no anger, no bitterness, only a calm certainty that I was finally breaking free from a relationship that had become toxic. 2 months passed. The divorce proceedings moved forward efficiently, thanks to the paternity test results and the evidence Lisa had provided. I threw myself into work, accepting a major contract in Alaska that would keep me busy through the winter. Then Mark called with surprising news. Amber and Jonathan are hosting a gender reveal party this weekend, he said. Caroline from your old neighborhood got an invitation by mistake. They used an outdated address list. Thought you should know. I thanked him for the information, but didn't give it much thought. Their lives were no longer my concern. But the next day, I received a text from Lisa. Jonathan's planning something nasty. He's telling everyone you knew about the baby all along and abandoned her. Thought you should know. This caught my attention. I'd maintained my silence about the affair out of dignity, not weakness. But I wouldn't allow my reputation to be dragged through the mud. I called Lisa back. What exactly is he saying? That you couldn't handle Amber's pregnancy after the miscarriages. That you knew the baby was yours but couldn't face fatherhood. He's painting himself as the hero who stepped in. People are believing it. A cold anger settled in my chest. Not the hot rage of betrayal, but something more focused, more deliberate. When and where is this party? Lisa gave me the details. Sunday afternoon at Jonathan's lake house, the very place I discovered their affair. I spent the next 2 days considering my options. I could ignore it, focus on my own life, and let them spread their lies. Or I could confront the situation directly, set the record straight. Sunday arrived clear and crisp. I wore a simple button-down shirt and slacks, casual but put together. I wasn't there to make a scene, just to face the truth. As I pulled up at the lake house, I saw cars lining the driveway, colleagues from Green Future, mutual friends, even some of Amber's family. People who had once been part of my life, too. I straightened my shoulders and walked toward the gathering on the back deck. The conversations hushed as I approached, faces registering shock at my appearance. Amber spotted me first, her hand flying her mouth. Jonathan stood beside her, his arm possessively around her shoulders, a smug smile freezing on his face. I moved with calm purpose through the crowd, stopping at a respectful distance from a couple. Daniel, Amber whispered. What are you doing here? I smiled politely. I heard there was an announcement being made, and some interesting stories being told about me. I thought I should be here to set the record straight. Jonathan stepped forward, trying to intimidate me with his height advantage. This is a private event. You need to leave. I held my ground, meeting his gaze steadily. The confrontation I'd avoided months ago was finally happening, but on my terms. A hush fell over the gathering as Jonathan stepped toward me, attempting to intimidate me with his physical presence. "This is a private celebration," he repeated, voice low but sharp. "You weren't invited." I stood my ground. "Actually, I think it's time everyone heard the truth. About the affair, about the baby, about everything." Jonathan's eyes darted nervously around the crowd. "Amber, take our guests inside," he ordered, but no one moved. The tension in the air was palpable, everyone sensing the dramatic confrontation unfolding. During the baby announcement, Jonathan came up to a couple I recognized from Green Future and said, "Soon you can congratulate me properly. I'm going to be a father." Amber smiled beside him, her hand cradling her baby bump. That's when I stepped forward. "Interesting how you're claiming paternity now, Jonathan. Wasn't it just 3 months ago when you told Amber you wanted nothing to do with her baby?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jonathan's face flushed dark red. "You're making a scene," he hissed. "This is our special day. Special days should be built on truth, not lies," I replied calmly. "You've been telling everyone I abandoned Amber when she got pregnant, that I couldn't handle fatherhood. But we all know that's not what happened." Amber stepped forward, panic in her eyes. "Daniel, please." I turned to face the gathered guests. "The truth is simple. Amber and Jonathan had an affair for nearly a year. When she got pregnant, she briefly tried to pass the child off as mine. A paternity test proved otherwise." I held Jonathan's gaze steadily. "These are facts, not stories." One of Jonathan's colleagues spoke up. "Is this true, Jonathan?" Before he could respond, Lisa emerged from the crowd, tablet in hand. "I have the text messages right here. The ones where you told Amber to get rid of it when she first told you she was pregnant." Why did next shocked everyone, including myself. Instead of continuing the confrontation, I simply nodded to Lisa, turned to the gathered crowd, and said, "I wish Amber and Jonathan well with their child. The truth is all I came here to deliver." As I walked away, heads held high, the murmurs behind me grew louder. I had accomplished what I came for, not revenge, but restoration of the truth. Back in my truck, I took a deep breath and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Sometimes the most powerful statement is simply standing your ground and speaking your truth, then walking away with your dignity intact. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of a restored wetland in Oregon, watching as native birds returned to their reclaimed habitat. The remediation project had been challenging: an abandoned industrial site, decades of chemical leakage, soil so contaminated experts said it was beyond saving. But I knew better. I'd built my career on bringing damaged ecosystems back from the brink. Nothing was beyond saving if you applied the right approach, had enough patience, and recognized when to intervene versus when to let nature heal itself. "It's remarkable," said Dr. Eleanor Chun, the lead biologist on the project. "When we started, nothing would grow here. Now look at it." I nodded, surveying the thriving landscape. Resilience is built into the natural order. Sometimes we just need to remove the toxins and give things time to recover. She gave me a knowing look. "We're not just talking about wetlands anymore, are we?" I smiled. My divorce had been finalized months ago. The professional community had learned the truth about Jonathan and Amber, especially after their hasty wedding fell apart just weeks after their daughter's birth. Last I heard, Amber had moved back to her hometown, while Jonathan was fighting a sexual harassment lawsuit from another employee at Green Future. But their story was no longer part of mine. "How's Portland treating you?" Eleanor asked as we walked back to our vehicles. "It's home," I replied, though I'm considering that position with the International Conservation Corps. They need someone to head their disaster response team. Taking your skills global? That's impressive. What I didn't tell her was that the position had come through Mark's sister, who had introduced me to Sophia, the ICC's director. Sophia and I had been seeing each other for 2 months. Nothing serious yet, but promising. She understood commitment and integrity. Her work required both. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on how much had changed in a year. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. Betrayal leaves scars, but it no longer defined me. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, applying the same principles I used in my work. Identify the damage, remove the harmful elements, support the natural healing process, and be patient with the results. Some relationships, like some ecosystems, couldn't be saved. But that didn't mean you couldn't thrive again, stronger and wiser than before.